Welcome to We Gotta Talk, a live weekly talk show and podcast where we like to dig deep. From health to relationships to alternative lifestyles and more, the one thing you will always get is a deep dive. I'm Sunny, a 15-year veteran of TV news, freelance writer, blogger, mom of three, and wife. But most of all, I'm just a die-hard oversharer, someone who's genuinely curious about, well, everything around me. And I can't wait for you to join in on these conversations that I promise will impact, inspire, and entertain you. Now, let's talk. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of We Gotta Talk with Sunny. I am Sunny, and I'm so grateful that you're here today. I realized that last week, which was the first episode of 2021, was my 100th episode. So yay, I went by with absolutely no fanfare and recognition. So this is 101. And we have, as always, some really, really great info for you today. So today's guest is Wendy Wright. She is a financial therapist and certified financial recovery counselor. And what's interesting about the conversation we're going to have today about women in money or people in money, but we're going to kind of dial down on the women thing, is that Wendy teaches us to remake our relationship with money, right? So you can put your money with an investor and they can tell you practically and objectively what to do with it, what he or she thinks would be the best investment for that stack of money that you have. Wendy helps you add something else to the mix. She helps you repair your relationship with money and how you see it coming in and going out of your life, so that when you actually do make those investments, you're in a much healthier spot to sort of maintain the wealth. So we got some great submitted questions from people on Instagram. We have a ton of topics we're going to cover. But first, before we do that, we like to do a little catch up on what's happening. So if you're coming here for Wendy, you're listening to the audio only, hit your fast forward button. Give me about 5 to 7 minutes because there's a lot happening in the world. We're going to bring on producer Rachel right now, who is live, if you're watching, live in LA. Rachel, how's it going?
Good. It's going good.
I was trying to queue up REM's It's the End of the World, but it didn't work. And then I was like, copyright issues. But wow, it's been a week. So we're taping this on January 13th, a full week after the Capital Riots, which, Rachel, we worked in news for, collectively decades. Me, 15 years alone, was one of the first times I can remember crying about something that was not a human related, like an individual human related story.
Wow.
Did you experience the coverage of that story, especially outside of the industry now, with any level of emotion?
No, not with any level of emotion. I feel like since being out of news, like I know what happens when I open that emotional door and go into like feeling all of the feelings that come with every single news story. Like I know what it is. And sometimes I cannot go there from like an emotional place, but I did look at it from like an outside perspective. And I was reading on social and everybody had such strong and different opinions about everything that was going on. And the choices that were made by both like government and the choices that also weren't made by the government. It didn't give me like an emotional reaction, but I did get this sense that like, oh shit, this is bad. This is not good.
Yeah.
This is not helping our, like, is this really going to help? Is this going to help change our state of democracy? Is this going to make the political parties any different? Or is this just making a bad thing worse?
Pushing everything out this way. Again, we did that whole episode where we talked about the crime of being a moderate, which is strange to me that that's a weird thing these days. But this is what it's pushing people out further and further and further. I will say there was absolutely no part of me that supports what happened last Wednesday.
No.
Complete circus. And it was an embarrassment to the process of democracy. I think what got me was knowing that for a relatively young country, we are so used to our freedoms and our ability to share our thoughts and the free press and things like that, that when you see someone laying siege to what, the building that represents all these rights that we take for granted, I was like, really? I was offended. I was like, what are you doing?
Right.
Like, this is not the way to do it. And I wrote this on my blog too, which was a post, I guess that would be a week or so back if you're listening to this. What really angered me was the complete lack of strong response from law enforcement there.
Mm-hmm.
If this were a massive group of people of color, it would be it would be bloodier. It would be more dangerous. It was watching it unfold was simultaneously terrifying and sad. And then also like, where's the in time, like the real time response to what's happening here? So anyway, we have to address that, because right now, as it stands, they're making a move to impeach the president. Like I said, we're taping this on Wednesday, so it'll pass the House. It has to go to the Senate from that point. And if it goes to the Senate, which it is expected to do, they have to hold a vote to essentially convict the president. And then there's another. So when you say, president is impeached, it means he essentially was presented with kind of like an indictment of sorts, right? It's starting the process. It doesn't mean he's actually, I think sometimes we conflate those two. We say, well, he's impeached. Well, yes, that doesn't mean he's leaving office. It has to make it through several other steps. So we'll see what happens. We'll gossip about it when it happens. One other, just to lighten the mood, I have to bring in some Hollywood gossip, Rach, because this story, we were talking about this in pre-show and you hadn't heard this. Armie Hammer and his cannibalism tweet.
And I'm like, but wait, cannibalism is eating humans or having sex with dead people? Like, which one is it?
That's necrophilia. Wait, sidebar. I promise, guys, we're going to get into this serious discussion in a second. Okay, so yes, necrophilia is that.
That's the other one. Cannibalism is eating humans.
Yes, cannibalism is like eating, like Hannibal Lecter. Necrophilia is like some other messed up stuff. I was in a Walmart once, by the way, in Central Florida. And
you're really setting yourself up there, Sunny.
Well, when you said necrophilia, it reminded me, this guy was wearing a t-shirt. This was the most Florida of all Florida moments. It said, necrophilia, crack into a cold one. And I was like, what is life? It was the most, if I could have hurled on the spot. Oh my God, it was awful. Anyway, you guys...
How does that, like, wait a second, how does that t-shirt get printed and not censored? And then like you've got our president of the United States being banned from like a handful of social media platforms, but like necrophilia t-shirts are like A-okay.
Protect my free speech. Oh my God, I can't. Anyway, we're going to wrap this up because I feel like we're going to scare people. But you guys, if this is what 2021 is about, I'm out. Like, just fast forward me, cryo-freeze me and my people until next year. Bring us back in 2022 when our democracy is back and thriving and people aren't trying to eat people, especially like actors that people love. All right,
listen,
hold on.
Wait a second. I'm all for like free speech of all of the things.
Right.
And that is what the block button is for on social media. Like, if you don't want to see the things, you don't see the things. Like, you've got to we have free will, people. Use your free will. That's what I got to say about that.
I'll stay away from the cannibals. Oh my God.
Wait, you didn't say what his tweet was, because I'm like, now I need I didn't want to have to go look it up.
If you Google it, it'll all come up. He says, there's like some NSFW, not safe for work language here. He says, I'm thinking of holding your heart in my hand and controlling it when it beats. I am 100% a cannibal. I want to eat you. Blank. That's scary to admit. I've never admitted that before. I've cut the heart out of a living animal before and eaten it while still warm. And this is from his DMs, allegedly. Capital A, allegedly. So if it's just, I can't. The whole world is crumbling. This is... What if there is?
I just am so not phased anymore, Sunny. Like, I'm just like, of course this is happening. Of course the Capitol's being stormed. Of course he's got, like, it's like, well, what else,
End of days, Rach. I check out. I'm telling you, get me like Disney style. Wasn't the rumor that he like cryo froze his body? I'm going to get a house-sized cryo tank. I'm going to freeze my ass until next year. And I'm going to wake up. This is going to be great.
Just going to pause on the show. I'll just feel like, hello, everybody. Sunny has decided to take a year off and freeze her body, cryo freeze. She's taking a break from social media to work on herself for a year. She'll be back.
taking a break from existence. Okay, let's bring on Wendy because this is a really, really great topic. Rach, I love you. We'll see you on the back end of the show. Okay, come back. Don't go far. Okay, so as we said at the beginning of the show, today's episode is so good because it's one of those you're going to walk away with some concrete advice on how to make your life a little bit better right away. So let's bring in Wendy Wright. As I mentioned, she is a financial therapist, a certified financial recovery counselor, a psychotherapist, and a consultant based in Denver. Wendy, thank you so much for coming on the show.
You bet, Sunny. Thanks for having me.
So I am really excited about this because much like with our episode last week, the beginning of the year represents a lot of people's points in time to turn things around or try to change old habits. So I want to start with you by asking, what is financial therapy? Because many people have worked with financial investors before, but this concept is new to a lot of people. So how is it different?
Yeah, it's really unique. It is this bringing in this intersection of money and emotions. And if, I think we all know that there's some emotions that come up around our relationship with money. So financial therapy is just this place where my clients can come in and have this safe space without any judgment to really talk about their relationship with money. So we might make money plans, but we start out by telling their money story and seeing what that brings up and how that's showing up in their current day-to-day life. So it's applying therapeutic principles. And then I'm also trained to help people with basics of money coaching as far as setting up systems and things. And so most of my clients after the first few sessions are just like, wow, I didn't even know that this existed. I didn't know that there was a place where I could come and talk about all things about money without any judgment and really busting through shame.
Yeah, I was going to ask what the biggest emotional hurdle is for many of your clients. So can you run through what you most frequently hear when people are ready to turn things around?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot of shame busting. So, and by that, what I mean is when there is, and I think the beginning of the year is a great place for this to show up, because when we're experiencing a lot of shame, we tend to go into a lot of all or nothing thinking. And because part of that is a way to manage the risk that shame gives, because shame is like always lurking around the corner, waiting to kind of bust you and be like, look, see, I told you were stupid, that kind of energy. And that's one of the beautiful things about looking at money with a therapeutic lens, because people's patterns with money, they tend to tell themselves that they're stupid, or that they're an idiot, or that or maybe even, worse or cusser words, kind of thing, in that negative self-talk. And so that blocks you when you just believe that you're stupid or that you have bad habits. Then, you're like, well, let me look for a new habit, or let me look for a new pattern, or let me sign up for a new program. What's really happening is underneath all that is this mindset of that they're stupid or something like that. And so then they get stuck. And so by looking at it therapeutically, we're able to see, where did that story start? How do we move forward without it? And one of the things that I'm able to do with clients is take them into the decision-making process and find out where they're stuck. So we really whittle it down to very micro moments in their purchasing or spending or debting decisions, and see where they're stuck, and then change can begin to occur.
I will say this is a time unlike any other where we are tempted, and in ways that we haven't before, to consume, to shop, and to spend. So even if you don't technically have a spending problem, or you're not in a space where you're in the red per se with your money, I would imagine that your job is more challenging now than ever, because we open our emails, we see a promotion, we have Amazon on our phones, we are constantly at computers. So what is something you tell people who feel very triggered by the abundance of shopping and buying options?
Yeah. It actually kind of is helpful in the sense that they're putting things in their online carts, because what I help them do is some journaling about that. So if they want to pause that process, because they may be really activated about something, maybe something they saw on the news, or some news that they've heard, or just the fact that they're getting up for another kind of what we're calling COVID Groundhog Day, like, okay, I'm just going to stay home and work today, kind of feeling. So as they put the stuff in their cart, what I do is we introduce journaling, and just about 3 sentences of this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm feeling. That's one of the first things that I give people. And I think we're setting it up so that people can get access to this just little PDF worksheet of your transaction and a thought and a feeling. And it really helps open it up, especially when you do the thought and the feeling with what I like to repeat over and over and over again is abundant, compassionate curiosity and zero judgment.
So that's something I would use, Wendy. We're looking, by the way, if you guys are watching live now, you're seeing it, you're listening on the podcast, we'll include the link in show notes. But what it is a purchase tracking chart. So you're seeing the date, the expense of the item, the thoughts and the feelings. Tell us what attaching the emotional component does.
Yeah, it really helps begin to help you identify your mindset, identify your triggers, identify what also maybe what you're trying to passively communicate through purchases. So sometimes we are trying to say, I'm going to buy this for my significant other and hope that they know I love them. And, or I'm going to buy this and hope that people, and then maybe I'll tell everybody about how on sale it was so that I'm wanting to communicate to them that I'm making sure I'm, not spending any money that I don't have to. So that helps us see that maybe there's a scarcity mindset, maybe there's a fear of judgment, maybe there's something going on. And as with any sort of healing, when we're using something else to communicate other than our words, we can begin to identify that so that then we want to be able to use our words and communicate, hey, I'm nervous that you're going to think I'm stupid. I'm nervous that I'm going to think that I've made a mistake here. So I'm going to tell you about how I bought this with this coupon and this discount, and I spent hours looking it up, or what, kind of whatever may be going on for them. It helps them to identify that by writing it down. Because as you know, like when we pause, and I do encourage writing it like with a pencil or a pen, because that makes a different brain connection because you've slowed down enough to really notice it if you're writing it down.
And what does that do, like psychologically speaking? It's making us, I would imagine, face how much is actually coming out of our pockets.
Right.
Thing. And what does it do to help us start saving more?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question, because I talk to people a lot about saving, because no matter how much money someone has, my clients have all kinds of amounts of money. It's the money mindset stuff really is not related to the balance in the bank. But what they see is if they don't feel like they can do it good enough, or a common thing that we start out with is them believing that they're bad with money and everyone else is good with money. So by tracking the transactions,
women always say that, especially if they're in a heterosexual relationship. They're like, my husband's the one that's really good with the money. I mean, we're saying that, right?
Well, I see it in all kinds of partnerships. Because when they believe, and again, it's kind of going back to that all or nothing thinking that someone is good or bad. And if they believe they're the ones that is bad with money. So one of the things we start with is stepping back from that and saying, okay, what if you're not good or bad with money? What if there are just some things you don't like about your relationship with money? And what if there's some things that you think you like about someone else's? Because often they're making judgments on seeing someone else's relationship with money in maybe 30 minutes of their life. But because they feel so bad about themselves and they look at someone else and think, oh, they're really good with money. And it just compounds that belief that they're bad with money. And when you believe that, then there's a lot of maybe despair, a lot of avoidance. A lot of my clients haven't actually logged into their bank account in months. And so one of the beauties of doing things remotely, because I work with people, even before COVID, I was working a lot with people remotely, because there are like less than 100, I think, financial therapists in the nation. So people from all over find me through the Financial Therapy Association. We'll do it. We'll log on. We'll share a screen. And I'm actually there with them when they log on to the bank account, and we actually make some changes. So if they're struggling to save, maybe we need to break down the goal so that it feels attainable. So maybe then we change. I even like to change the name of the bank account, because most banks will let you kind of go in and edit, so that instead of it just saying a blanket savings, we'll say savings goal $4,000. So that every time they log on, they're reminded of, oh yeah, that's what I'm doing here. Because there's enough research to show that if we have an emotional relationship with our savings, we're more likely to save. So once we start to really look at, and I'll ask them, what is your relationship with savings? And we'll talk about that because often there's some beliefs that pop up. And that's what a mindset is. It's like a set of beliefs that aren't really truths. So, if you believe you're not good with money, that's not really a truth, but it's a belief that guides decisions. If you have a scarcity mindset, that's a belief that there's never going to be enough money. That will guide a lot of your decisions. If you have a more of a what people might say an abundance mindset, sort of this thought that there's always going to be enough money, sometimes that really leads just avoiding it and not wanting to talk about it. So none of them are good or bad. We want to take that judgment out and just go, okay, that's what's been leading, that's what's been driving the bus, so to speak. And how can we do some things differently? And that's when they begin to really notice some significant changes.
That is fascinating. And I will second that. I break out in sweats at times logging on to my business portal. I'm like, today? I mean, so much so that my online portal broke last week. Like I just all of a sudden couldn't access it. And I was like, I was like, I don't have to worry about anything.
Oh my gosh, you are not alone. You are not alone.
Absolutely. And I want to speak to this issue. Well, you know what? I'm going to talk about mindset first, and then we're going to talk about freelancers, entrepreneurs, people who are stepping out of a traditional money-making pattern. So first, let me ask you, the abundance mindset is something we see on Instagram 55 times a day. We have manifestation coaches talking about it. We have, meditation coaches and therapists talking about a mindset of abundance. What is it? Because I buy into it as a theme. I buy into the fact that if I imagine more, the possibilities open up. I just don't know how to start doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's such a great question because it can be really confusing. And I think what's important, and this is what I would encourage people to do, is if you're feeling really drawn to an abundance mindset, like any sort of like label or sentence, I encourage journaling a few paragraphs about what does that really mean to you? Just like if you think someone else is good with money, what does that really mean to you? Most of the time when I'm working with a client and they think, oh, my brother-in-law is good with money or my dad was good with money, whatever, then we start talking about it. And what that really means is maybe they had a good amount of it, but maybe they were also very cruel with it, or whatever. So we want to look at what's under that. So with an abundance mindset, so I run a mastermind for entrepreneurs, which I think we'll talk a little bit more about too. But in it, part of what we do together is make plan. We make a business plan. So there's a place for dreaming and visioning, but you also want a plan that has traction. So you want to be able to say, okay, this is what I want. This is what I want to bring into my life. And then we want to look at what are some steps that will give traction so that this can actually happen. And that's where I think a lot of people will get stuck if they're really struggling and they're hoping that an abundance mindset will sort of magically take care of their problems. Mm-hmm. And we want to look at that without judging it, but we want to look at what is it that they're wanting that magic to help them maybe escape from or avoid, and how can we make some things that really create traction for them.
So we're breaking it down into saying what abundance means to you. And that you said could mean $, or it could mean what you do with money when you get it. And then what, like breaking that down into steps as to how to get there.
Yes.
That's what I'm hearing. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. It did, as a concept, I like I said, I buy in. I just want to make sure we dial down on how to use that concept in practice, because I think many people want to improve their relationship with money, and they look forward toward a future of abundance, whether that's monetarily or otherwise, but there's just a disconnect in how to take the first step to get there. So I'm glad we did that. Okay, let's talk about a completely different thing. There are people who are in a traditional, job / money earning system and work for an employer. They work their 40 hours a week. They have their 401k or other investment options available. There's a whole new other group. And I would contend that this is the more rapidly growing group of people, especially women, who have launched businesses, say over the past year, online, and are really trying to set up a system to start saving now because they do not have the benefit of that employer having the system in place. So what is your first and most important tip for freelancers, people who are working independently, or entrepreneurs, people who are starting to earn money in chunks here and there?
Absolutely. Okay. My first place to always start is by I'm encouraging them to take a deep breath, because sometimes we just start running away with whatever it is we're going to do. So by pausing and taking a deep breath and then asking, what is it that I want this to bring into my life? Really understanding that. So you'll understand your business plan, your business model, your business structure a lot better if you understand what you want it to bring into your personal life. So that's one of the places we'll start, is identifying what kind of income do you want, and also identifying how do you feel about having income. How do you feel about one meditation that we'll do is, how do you feel if you earn $20,000? How do you feel if you earn $50,000? How do you feel if you earn $100,000? And I encourage you viewers to just do that. Like pick some numbers, one that feels like, sure, that's a no-brainer. Pick a dream number and actually notice how it feels if you're going to bring that in, because until you really identify that you're okay bringing that into your life, it's most likely not going to happen. So knowing that, looking at that, and knowing what you want, how you want your business to support your personal life is really, really helpful and important. And it's one of the places I start when I work with entrepreneurs.
So should they be breaking it down to like, this is how much I want to earn monthly or yearly? And if so, I know this from experience, you don't even want to give yourself permission sometimes, to do that.
Right.
You know that, for example, in your launch month, you're not going to make X amount of dollars. So as a result, do we set that number deliberately lower for a period of time, or do you just throw it out there to the universe? Like, where do we land?
Yeah. Oh gosh, it's so helpful to have support around this, because that's part of, it's really hard. You want to set a goal that will feel satisfying. You also want to know what are the steps to create that goal, and then you want to be able to have the support around knowing that goal is part of a plan. But it also is going to be adjusted. It's going to have places where you'll see like, okay, maybe I thought I would sell, 500 of these, but now I'm selling 200 of those. So you revisit every quarter, kind of really look at it. I do a lot of, I encourage people to plan by quarters instead of months, because the months, as you know, go really fast. But if we look at it quarterly, that's one of the exercises that I have my clients do is just take one piece of paper, break it into quarters, and write down the goals for each quarter. But then if you notice that if you have a lot of internal dialogue around failure, if you don't make the goal perfectly, that's a place for therapy to come in, for us to look at that therapeutically, because what's happening most likely is a perfection part is really getting activated, and like, oh, well, you said it'd be like da-da-da-da, and now it's not, so you're a failure, you're stupid, and then that shuts you down. So you want to be able to not only make a plan, but understand how to make your plan adjustable.
Right. Okay. And do you advise people who are starting their own ventures to save immediately, or to use all of that money to like pay off business expenses they've incurred in launching their venture?
Yeah. Oh gosh, it's a great question, because you're kind of tiptoeing into the relationship with debt, which I also love to talk about too. But yes, I do, because one of the things that people will say, as a therapist, I've worked with a lot of therapists. And so I'll say, one of the things that keeps them maybe, sort of tied to a paycheck job is that I have benefits. And so one of the things I have them do right away is open a paid time off account, because it's very important. So no matter what your business is, you want to immediately start, even if it's 1% of your sales that week, even if it's $20, having weekly, putting a little bit aside for paid time off, because that's honoring that you will need a break, that you will need time off. And that's super important. And it does a lot psychologically to say, okay, I'm setting this business up in a way to create sufficiency in my life. And that's the word I really look at a lot when we're moving from scarcity. I encourage people to move to sufficiency instead of abundance, because sufficiency to me just feels more grounded and more like, okay, this is enoughness. And that's something that people really struggle with, is what is enough.
I'm sorry, finish and then I'll move on.
Well, then we want to also look at that relationship to debt. So I don't know if we want to dive into that a little bit.
Yes, I was going to ask that. What many people in this stage in life find themselves, the position we find ourselves in, is at times worrying about finishing paying off our college and our education debt, while also saving for our kids' education funds, while also paying off a mortgage. So Is there any practical advice for, say, when you get that paycheck, whether it's through your company or through your own individual thing you've set up, how do you portion that out? And do we take the advice we've heard for years and focus on paying down debt first?
Please don't. I will say, one of the biggest things that I find to be super helpful is to start by forgiving yourself for the debt. Because what I want to help people do is find a way to stay out of debt, not just get out of debt. Lots and lots of times people will rush because they feel really panicky and they feel a lot of shame. And oh my gosh, if you just look at your phone today, you're going to get shamed if you have debt, because it makes a good headline. Hurry up and get out of debt. It does not make a good lifestyle. And if you have made something, if you've done some things in the past where you have incurred more debt, because it can happen easily, what we want to do is look at not saying that you're bad with money because you have debt. You want to say, I can forgive myself for this debt. And then we want to build a plan that includes saving, includes a way of looking at often the things that people put on credit cards are often things that they feel like maybe are emergencies, but they're really not. If we're able to step back and make a plan, and that's what I do with my clients, is part of the plan is remembering the dog will need to go to the vet. The car will need, and especially in Colorado, we're always trying to get, the good tires for the snow and ice roads, like knowing and planning those things, even going so far as to learn what is your deductible for your health insurance. We're going to put that aside. Then we build all that into a system. And then we put that aside, like say maybe it's going to be a $12,000, this easy math. So maybe it's $12,000 a year that we've determined are those anticipated but non-monthly expenses. We break it down and put $1,000 into savings a month. So it makes it more manageable. And also we want to take away that panic, because when they panic and pay off debt, I have this happen a lot, and I'm sure some of your viewers as well. You pay off a lot of debt at the first of the month, but then you recognize by the 22nd of the month, like, oh my gosh, I actually don't have enough to make it through the month. And then you add more debt to the credit card. And so you're in this cycle. And not only are you in this cycle, but you're in this cycle of beating yourself up, because most likely if we were listening or could observe your thought bubbles, what we'd be hearing is a lot of real self-condemnation for it. So when we remove that judgment, it really unpacks things and lets change start to happen.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah. I mean, debt unfortunately is a given for most people who pursue higher education these days. So hearing that part of the equation is new to me. I've never heard people address the psychological part of that before. But yes, okay, we're going to be cutting that for a promotional soundbite because that was really good information.
Oh, good. Okay.
Okay, so let's talk about specific and smart ways to invest our money. When we chatted yesterday, I know that you aren't the guy/girl. I just said guy. You know what I mean? The girl who's telling people you need to invest in this stock or in this, fund, or this is what you need to do. But in most generic terms as possible, do you have a preference for when people finally have money they are ready to invest and or save, if they decide on the higher risk investment route or the savings account, safe way? Mm-hmm. Do you have any sort of rule of thumb to help clients decide what's best for their cash?
Yes. Yeah. So a couple of different things come to my mind, Sunny. One is I often work with people who have been so scared to talk to a financial planner or advisor because they feel so much shame. And so sometimes working with a financial therapist can help you get to the point where you feel more comfortable having those conversations. Sometimes we'll sort of role play it in a session so that when they go to the financial advisor, they can actually, kind of see that. But one of the biggest things that we want to be able to do is work out of their plan. So for instance, if someone feels like they're going to maybe jump on an online trading platform and things like this too, and they feel an urgency to it, or that's what we want to look at. What are the feelings under this? And is there magical thinking involved? Is this trying to, win a lottery kind of feeling? Because that can set up for a lot of emotion, sort of a roller coaster. And it's also kind of in that avoidance of looking at their plan. So we want to look at their overall plan, and we want to say, okay, here's what I have for my, I break things down into 3 main categories, because naming your categories is a big part of healing. But we've got basics and obligations. That's sort of your hierarchy of needs: food, clothing, shelter, and things you're legally obligated to. And then we have over here, we have savings, financial independence, which I don't use the word retirement very much because a lot of times that feels like, oh, that's like so far away. Why would I plan for that? But financial independence is a term people get more connected to because it's when you can live off your money. Doesn't matter what age you are, you can still work. But a financial independence number is, okay, I have enough investments that it will pay me $50,000 a year or something like that. So we look at that. It's this middle category that trips people up more than anything. And it's what I call the nurture and maintain. So it's both maintaining your life, which tends to not be monthly, and nurturing yourself, which could be a massage or it could be a cup of coffee at your favorite coffee shop. We're not going to judge it. But once they're able to set it up like that, then they can see what their needs are. Then they can see, what is my tolerance for risk? So that's part of the investment decision-making process is, what is my tolerance for risk? And what does my plan say, how much risk I can tolerate? What is my age? How old I am? Things like that will all say. That's a big part of investment decisions, is knowing what is your relationship to risk and what fits your life.
And you are the step then before we knock on the financial investor's door and say, this is what I'm comfortable with. And gosh, I wish I would have met you when I started working and earning money. I was one of those people who had a very inexplicable fear of meeting with people I thought were more intelligent than me and about money. And before I passed it off to the next person down the line, my husband. What I did learn after meeting with a great financial advisor is that there was no reason to feel that way. And I could express my thoughts about, for example, what you just said, risk, or my worries in the most basic layman terms as possible. And they understood it. I didn't have to go in there being a stock market wizard or this like financial genius. All I had to do was, but I wish I would have had that piece before, because I did miss critical years of saving, I'm certain, because of that.
Me too. Oh, absolutely. Me too. I had to do my own money work.
Yeah. Gosh, I mean, your job is one of those that I hear about and I'm like, gosh, this makes so much sense. Why didn't I think of this? I want to get to some really great viewer / Instagram questions that we got. And where did I put them? Here they are. Like I said, a lot of the people who wrote in had kind of the same issues or concerns, being, in this case, the mid to late 30s, either re-entering the workforce after a period of time or just starting. So I'm going to read you this one, and you can give me your thoughts. Okay, she says, I worked for 13 years, had a retirement account through work, and then I was out of the workforce for 8 years raising my kids. I'm back at work for a year now and have been doing employer retirement. What is the best advice to be able to retire someday? I'm trying to make up for those last 8 years to some degree, and now I'm thinking about additional investing. What's the best way to start?
I think one of the things that the person asking that question isn't saying this specifically, but I think what I might be hearing underneath this is, what I'd say is how to not panic. Mm-hmm. So, because part of that, you might feel this real panic of, oh my gosh, I lost 8 years. Oh my gosh. And that won't help. So it's okay to not panic. It's okay to pause and look at, okay, you made some trade-offs. It's a lot of what our relationship to money is. Any kind of purchase we make, any sort of decision we make, it's a trade-off. I talk a lot about decision-making because that is what's underneath it. And if you don't understand one person's relationship or what they're doing with money, you do understand they're making decisions and that we each make our own decisions in different ways. And so I talk a lot about that. I've created a decision-making matrix where people can look at that. So I think one of the things to do is to hopefully they feel comfortable enough looking at with a financial advisor, someone who can actually plug in all that they already have and look at what would, if I were to retire, at this age or whatever, based on what we have, then they can back engineer, okay, then how much do I want to put into savings? But sometimes those planning steps can feel really hard, especially if you feel some despair or panic for those lost years. You might put off having that kind of conversation because you're expecting to hear that you're a failure, or you're expecting to hear that it's hopeless. And so being able to go ahead and have that conversation, run some numbers, because there's some math involved there, and see where you want to invest and what you want that to look like.
Okay, great. That's a great first step. So understand the feeling behind that panic and reverse engineer. That's great advice. Okay, the next one is, what's the best way to stay on top of all the little purchases that add up to a lot? Checking your account daily, writing it down. I'm trying to rein in spending and have it be more purposeful.
Oh, yeah. This one is really helpful because we have a lot of places typically where we buy a lot of stuff at once, like whether it be Target or your Amazon cart, things like that, where you end up with this big purchase and you might be like, what did I actually do there? And so one of the ways that I have people start with that is actually breaking it up on the conveyor belt. Break it up and separate. So if you're at a big box store kind of thing, separate out groceries, clothes, office supplies. And often they're really friendly and really helpful to do this at first. Ring them up separately so that and then have a tracking system. Tracking makes a big difference. Tracking can be scary. The tracking system, I use some that have places where you can actually add your thoughts and feelings right there when you're tracking it, so that you can drill down on what's motivating the decisions, what's motivating the purchases, and then if it's a lot, maybe we look back. What happened the day before? Often we can kind of figure out what triggered maybe some purchase decisions. Mm-hmm. So looking at it that way, but breaking those things out. So even in your online shopping cart, break it out as much as you can as to what categories they are, and have that will help a lot with identifying and creating, because you want to create more awareness so that you can have a more, I say this a lot, and I know a lot of people are like, that could never happen, but you want to have we want to build a mindful and meditative relationship with your money. And so part of that is awareness without judging it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's good. And just stay out of Target, because that never ends well. It just doesn't. I don't know what it is.
I feel like I should just give them $100 at the door.
It's insane. Really. And this year for me, Wendy, is a year where I'm aiming to be more purposeful. Like, I'm doing things in the home to streamline and minimize. Yeah. And this is a part of that conversation that really hadn't occurred to me until I spoke to you. It's like, drilling down on the money side. I'm really not spending that much, but if I could find ways to simplify my approach so that when I do need something, mm-hmm. I don't do that whole just buy everything I can just because it's there and just because I think I need it. Like, it really does add another level of awareness to consumption that I feel like is a big part of at least what I'm trying to do here with minimizing and simplifying. So it really is helpful. So the last question I want to get to is something that people have been discussing a ton lately, because cryptocurrency was in the news for a big bust recently. Mm-hmm. What your general thoughts are on new ways to invest, Bitcoin, crypto, and all of these new and tempting ways that are out there, in some cases where it seems like we can make quick cash. What is your advice to younger people or people who are still in the workforce about investing in some of those higher risk categories?
Yeah. I think that's another place where it's really helpful to understand what are the emotions underneath it. Is there some magical thinking? Are you trying to solve a problem, or maybe prove to a parent that you can get your act together, or whatever? There can be lots of different things. Maybe trying to find the best way to make money so that you can help your favorite charity. Like, there's no judgment. That's what's really important. Understanding your overall plan. I'm just going to come back to that. Knowing your overall plan, knowing where any risk of investment fits in with your temperament. Are you going to be up all night watching the trading, go forward? That might not be ideal for you. Do you see it and understand that there's a little bit of a gamble there? So you want to know how that feels. So again, knowing yourself, knowing your temperament type, your personality type, and how that's going to connect and relate to any level of risk is really important. There's just so much power in approaching that with that compassionate curiosity as to what's driving the decision, not judging it, so that you can get to what's underneath that.
I am so grateful, Wendy, that you were able to spend some time and break down some really complicated things for us. I want you to take the opportunity to now tell us how we can work with you, any programs you have coming up where people, if they hear this and think, this is what I need in my life, how they can connect with you more directly.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm running a mastermind. I call it a Money Mindfulness Mastermind, and it's a 12-week program for entrepreneurs or for people who want to be an entrepreneur, who want to really look at in a group setting with that support and accountability, and and allowing the space to look at these things without any judgment, a lot of compassion, where we look at what's your personal needs, how's your business going to support your personal life, how we're going to build a business plan. And again, I purposely use the word plan because it has more of an energy of the adjustability, whereas I don't use the word budget, because that tends to lead into an energy of bullying for a lot of people. So when we make this business plan, we also look at how do we make adjustments with it. We want to identify what is your key decision-making matrix point. So the decision-making matrix has 7 layers, and it's a shifting from shame-based to compassion-based mindsets. So these kind of things are available. Going to my website, signing up for the group starts in February, or signing up for my newsletter, things like that, where you'll get more and more announcements, and you can follow me on all the things. It's all located on my website. And there's a promotion for listeners today. I think, yeah, there it is, $121 off of the signing up for the mastermind.
I love that. Yeah. So the code, guys, if you're listening on the podcast, is Sunny, SONNI 121. You get $121 off. And again, those are for your Money Mindfulness Mastermind program, which starts on February 23rd. And you're the intersection of Money and Milkshakes, which begins February 16th, which is another 12-week experience. You have live interaction, you have downloadable workbooks, and you're actually walking people through. Before I let you go, just so that we can really be clear on what people are getting, you will help people who are starting their own business walk away with an actual plan on paper of what to do next steps in their business.
Yes. Yeah. There's definite, there will be very specific homework based on where they are. Like if they haven't opened a business account yet, that will be their homework, and they'll have the group to have the accountability. We meet every other week as a group. Or if they haven't started setting up a paid time off savings account, that will be their homework. They'll do that. If they don't have a business plan for the year yet, that will be, so we'll go through these pieces of homework so that each person is meeting themselves at where they are and able to take the steps. And if they can't take the step that week or over the time period that it's their homework, then we're going to process that and look at, okay, what got in the way and how do we make this step more tangible and manageable?
I love that you are adding this element of intention to an otherwise really dry subject, which is numbers and money. So I'm so grateful. Wendy, as the final question, and just to kind of put a bow on all the amazing things we covered today, any line or inspiration or mantra that you find yourself repeating to your clients or to yourself to remind them that it is, in fact, possible to be successful and profitable and do well?
Absolutely. Yes. The thing I repeat so often, because it makes such a difference, is we are going to approach everything with abundant, compassionate curiosity and zero judgment. And it makes a huge difference, and change starts to occur.
I love that. Well, thank you, Wendy, again, for spending so much time today. And guys, we will put all of the information that Wendy just mentioned about her mastermind and all of her other online programs in show notes. So be sure to check that out. We'll also put the promo code in there as well. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode or watching this episode of We Gotta Talk with Sunny. I'm feeling so great about the guests that we have this year. We're like changing perspectives in a big way. Last week with breath work, this week with turning your financial future around. I am so grateful that you spent time with me listening to these amazing people. If this episode or watching this show brought you any value, I ask you very kindly to please take a few seconds to leave a rating and review, especially on Apple Podcasts. That makes a huge difference. I'm trying to get to 100 by the end of February. So we're almost there. Please do that. I am grateful for you. Have a wonderful rest of the week, and we will see you next week back here on We Gotta Talk. Bye.